Let's be honest for a moment. When you wake up in the morning, how long does it take before the weight of everything you're avoiding starts whispering in the back of your mind? The unread messages, the postponed tasks, the conversation you keep putting off, the health habits you promised to start. It all sits there like quiet background noise. You distract yourself, scroll a bit, tell yourself you'll start later. But deep down, you know the truth. You're not avoiding the tasks. You're avoiding yourself. That's the real reason responsibility feels heavy. It's not the job, the bills, the expectations. It's that every responsibility mirrors back who you are and who you're not yet willing to be. Jung once said that the greatest burden a man can carry is the unlived life within him. And that's what happens when you start running from responsibility. You think you're escaping pressure, but what you're really escaping is the reflection of your own potential. Most men believe responsibility means duty, obedience, obligation. But responsibility, in its truest sense, isn't about doing what others demand. It's about responding to life consciously. The word itself, responsibility, means the ability to respond, to meet reality as it is, not as you wish it to be. The opposite of responsibility, then, isn't laziness. It's unconsciousness. And that's the epidemic men are facing today. Not lack of ambition, but lack of contact with themselves. You keep yourself busy, but not productive. You stay entertained, but not fulfilled. You make plans, but not decisions. And somewhere along the way, you start confusing motion for meaning. But the truth is, you can't outwork avoidance. You can't escape the man you are by running faster toward the life you're pretending to live. Responsibility, when understood properly, is not a cage. It's a key. It's how you build structure around your potential so that it can actually manifest in the world. But to embrace responsibility fully, you first have to face the part of yourself that keeps sabotaging it. The one that fears accountability because deep down, accountability means exposure. Let's break this down together, not as judgment, but as awareness. Because if you can see why you keep running from your own power, you can finally stop the chase. 1. You avoid responsibility because it confronts the shadow. Every man carries two selves, the one he shows the world and the one that lives beneath the surface. The outer self is competent, reliable, well-spoken. The inner one is impulsive, angry, insecure, sometimes afraid. Most men spend decades polishing the first and hiding the second. But responsibility, true responsibility, always brings the shadow to the surface. When you commit to something meaningful, you can't hide anymore. You have to face your inconsistency, your weakness, your avoidance. You'll see where your energy leaks, where your promises don't hold, where you talk more than you execute. And for many men, that confrontation feels unbearable. So they run. They stay busy instead of focused. They start projects but never finish them. They hide behind overthinking, analysis, or cynicism. They tell themselves they're not ready yet, or that the timing isn't right. But the truth is simpler. They're terrified of seeing what responsibility would reveal. Jung warned that what we avoid doesn't disappear. It grows stronger in the dark. When you keep turning away from your responsibilities, you don't escape the weight. You just transfer it to your unconscious. It turns into guilt, anxiety, resentment, self-contempt. You start feeling like life is something happening to you instead of something you're actively creating. That's why men who avoid responsibility often feel perpetually restless. They can't relax because deep down, they know they're not living in alignment with what they're capable of. The mind says, "I'll start tomorrow," but the soul knows that tomorrow never comes. Facing the shadow means accepting that avoidance is not protection, it's paralysis. You don't need to fix it instantly. You need to acknowledge it honestly. Every time you name an avoidance pattern, You take a piece of power back from your unconscious. And once you can see that, you begin to realize the deeper truth, that the part of you running from responsibility isn't evil or weak. It's scared. Scared of failure, scared of success, scared of being fully seen. The ego says, if I never commit, I can never be judged. But growth requires the exact opposite. To step forward anyway, willing to risk judgment in the pursuit of integrity. That's the first doorway back to strength. Stop running from what responsibility reveals. Because what it reveals is everything you need to integrate. 2. You avoid responsibility because you were conditioned to equate it with control. Most men learn early that responsibility means control. Suppress emotion, hold it together, don't let anything slip. You are probably taught that maturity meant carrying more and feeling less. And for a while, that works. You get rewarded for reliability, composure, and stoicism. But over time, that version of responsibility becomes suffocating because it's not responsibility, it's performance. You start equating being responsible with being numb. You stop sharing your struggles because you think it'll make you look weak. You overextend yourself to meet expectations that were never truly yours. You take on everything except the one thing that actually matters: ownership of your inner life. When Jung spoke of individuation, he didn't mean perfection. He meant integration, the ability to take ownership of every part of yourself, not just the polished ones. Real responsibility begins when you stop trying to control everything and start responding authentically to what life brings. That means saying no when something violates your integrity. It means letting people down when pleasing them would require betraying yourself. It means admitting when you don't know, when you're afraid, when you need help. If this journey eases something inside you, stay with us. Subscribe, and each step will bring a little more clarity. Thank you. Men mistake control for strength, but control is a fear response. It's the ego's desperate attempt to manage chaos instead of trusting itself to face it. The mature man doesn't need to control everything because he's not afraid of reality. He's anchored enough to meet it. If you've been living in a cycle of over-control, trying to make every outcome perfect, every impression polished, I want you to notice how tired you are. That fatigue isn't laziness, it's feedback. It's your psyche begging you to let go of the illusion that responsibility means endless containment. Real strength isn't about rigidity. It's about presence, the capacity to stay conscious in the middle of life's mess without abandoning yourself. And that brings us to the most uncomfortable truth of all. The reason you keep running from responsibility isn't that you're afraid of failing others. It's that you're afraid of facing yourself when there's no one left to blame. 3. The fear beneath the avoidance. Avoidance is rarely about external circumstances. It's about the fear of internal confrontation. You don't avoid the gym because it's hard. You avoid it because showing up reminds you of the discipline you lost. You don't avoid difficult conversations because they're unpleasant. You avoid them because they mirror back your own emotional immaturity. You don't avoid your purpose because it's unclear. You avoid it because it demands sacrifice, the death of comfort, the end of excuses. The ego hates responsibility because responsibility forces it to grow up. Every time you take ownership, you lose the luxury of being the victim. You can't complain, project, or justify. You have to evolve. And that's terrifying if your entire identity has been built on avoidance. But here's what most men don't realize. Responsibility doesn't just reveal your limits. It expands them. The man who consistently takes ownership of his time, his energy, his emotions, begins to experience life differently. Challenges stop feeling like threats and start feeling like training. Discipline stops feeling like restriction and starts feeling like self-respect. Accountability stops feeling like punishment and starts feeling like freedom. Because when you're fully responsible, no one can manipulate you anymore. You become unblameable. You stop waiting for life to change because you realize you are life. You are the one shaping it moment by moment. And this is where Jung's concept of the self becomes crucial. The self isn't some mystical entity. It's the totality of who you are. Conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, instinct and intellect. The more you integrate responsibility into your life, the more the self emerges as a guiding presence. You start hearing your own inner authority instead of outsourcing it to others. You stop chasing validation because you've earned your own respect. That's what responsibility really gives you. Internal authority. Not control over others, but mastery over yourself. Before we move on, pause for a second. Think about your own life right now. Where are you consistently avoiding responsibility? Not because you can't handle it, but because taking it would force you to confront something uncomfortable inside you. Maybe it's a project you keep delaying because finishing it would reveal whether you're truly good enough. Maybe it's a conversation with your partner that would expose how emotionally disconnected you've become. Maybe it's the physical shape you're in, the finances you've ignored, the habits you justify. Whatever it is, name it. Write about it in the comments. Be honest, not for me, for you. Because naming it is how the running ends. When you share your truth, you begin reclaiming the part of yourself that's been hiding behind avoidance. 4. Responsibility as initiation. Every culture used to have initiations, moments when a young man was pulled out of comfort and forced to meet his own strength. He would be tested, isolated, stripped of the illusions of boyhood, and shown who he really was. In modern life, those rituals are gone. What replaces them is chaos, burnout, crisis, divorce, depression. These are the modern initiations. They come uninvited, but their purpose is the same: to wake you up. When your life begins to fall apart because you've been avoiding responsibility, that collapse is an initiation in disguise. It's not trying to destroy you. It's trying to reforge you. The man who takes that pain and turns it into accountability becomes dangerous. Not to others, but to his own mediocrity. Responsibility is the masculine path to spiritual awakening, not through abstract philosophy, but through contact with reality, through the daily act of doing what's necessary with awareness and integrity. The man who embraces responsibility willingly becomes grounded, humble, and powerful. The one who avoids it becomes bitter, envious, and lost. There's no middle ground. Jung said that when you fail to live your potential consciously, it becomes fate. The man who avoids responsibility doesn't escape suffering. He just meets it unconsciously through crisis and regret. But the man who embraces it willingly transforms suffering into strength. That's what initiation means: choosing growth before life forces it upon you. 5. Responsibility as freedom. It sounds paradoxical, but the more responsibility you take, the freer you become. Not in the superficial sense of doing whatever you want, but in the deeper sense of no longer being ruled by fear. The man who takes full responsibility for his mind, his body, his relationships, and his purpose lives without excuses. And that absence of excuses is freedom. Most men think freedom means escaping obligation, but freedom without responsibility is just drift, endless movement with no meaning. Real freedom has weight. It comes from aligning your choices with your principles so completely that you can trust yourself in any situation. This is what makes responsibility sacred. It's not just a moral virtue, it's a psychological structure. It gives your life coherence. Without it, you live fragmented, scattered across half-finished ideas, unresolved emotions, unrealized potential. But when you start owning every part of your life, everything starts to unify. Your energy stops leaking through avoidance. Your confidence stops depending on performance. Your relationships start deepening because you're showing up honestly. Responsibility isn't the enemy of joy. It's the foundation of it. Because nothing feels better than self-respect. And self-respect only comes from one thing: consistently doing what your soul knows you need to do. 6. Integration and the new definition of strength. To live responsibly, you don't need to become perfect. You need to become present. You don't need to carry everything. You need to carry what's yours. That's the essence of mature masculinity. Knowing the difference between what belongs to you and what doesn't, and meeting both with awareness. When you finally stop running from responsibility, something incredible happens. The chaos of your life doesn't magically disappear, but your relationship to it transforms. You stop seeing obstacles as personal attacks and start recognizing them as feedback loops. You stop being afraid of pressure because you understand pressure creates form. You stop resenting the weight because you realize weight is what builds strength. This is why Jung said that a man's destiny is not shaped by his dreams, but by his willingness to carry the burden of his own development. Every time you take ownership of something you used to avoid, you're integrating another piece of your psyche. Responsibility is integration in motion. It's the practice of uniting your ideals with your actions. And that's how you become whole. Not through theory, but through daily contact with what's real. If you've listened this far, I'll tell you something you probably already know deep down. Avoidance has never protected you. It has only delayed your arrival. Every time you've postponed a responsibility, you've postponed your own growth. Every time you've escaped accountability, you've escaped authenticity. And every time you've run from reality, it has followed you, quietly, patiently, waiting for the day you'd stop and turn around. That day can be today. Responsibility isn't about adding more weight to your life. It's about aligning with what's already yours to carry. The moment you pick it up consciously, you stop feeling crushed by it. It becomes strength training for the soul. The truth is, men don't avoid responsibility. They avoid seeing who they become without it. But the man who faces it, who takes it willingly, who meets his life as it actually is, that man stops running. He becomes unshakable. Not perfectly, reliably. Begin. If you've stayed with me until now, it means you're searching for something deeper. Maybe an answer you've carried since childhood. Don't stop here. Perhaps the next video holds the key you've been waiting for. The piece that helps you untangle another thread of your story.